Cluses made it. We apologize for all the changes in the scheduling. When we originally scheduled this meeting, I didn't realize post audit could not be here. Ken Wren, to get the whole team here, would be required to be next week, so we pulled them off the schedule. Sorry, the agenda kept changing so much, but we did that. We are intending on taking a break at 9:50 to 11, recessing so we can all attend the Gold Star Family Remembrance Ceremony on the South Lawn. I know we had several requests for that. Then we'll resume back here at 11 and go on with an update from Jeff Maxson. That more than likely will be a closed session. 11:30, we'll start back up. So next month's meeting will be a full agenda, but this one's going to be a short one. And we have no minutes to approve, so with that, I think we'll welcome you to the committee and go ahead and start off. We had requested the Speaker Pro Tem to come and give us a little presentation on Senate Bill 291. I know we have Chair Wassinger on our committee, but I know that they both work together so much, so I appreciate you coming, Mr. Speaker, to give us a presentation. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. All right. So it's my understanding that research or the revisers have already kind of briefed Senate Bill 291 to you folks at your last meeting. So I'm not going to rehash all the specifics of it unless you would like for me to, and I'll let you ask me those questions specifically. But I was asked today to basically just how did we get to where we are today? And so it started around summer of 2023. Myself and Representative Wassinger, her and I are both on the House Modernization Committee. And at the time, her and I were discussing and talking about ways that we need to try to get the state of Kansas on better footing when it comes to our cybersecurity and our IT infrastructure. During those conversations over that interim and over that time period, I think we are all very well aware of the incident that happened with the judiciary. So that basically lit a fire under us to, hey, we need to have more conversations. We need to start picking speed up on this and actually try to get something done here during the 2024 session. Now, as we were progressing through the 2024 session, we were having conversations with all three branches of government, all three CEDOs at the time, and any other stakeholders that we could bring to the table in order for them to have an opinion on where it was that we needed to take our state as far as cybersecurity and our infrastructure. And I think that you can see the fruits of that labor when not a single branch of government came in to oppose this legislation. There were some that came in as neutrals, yes, and we took what they were telling us and we amended the bill per their recommendations and got them onto more supportive footing. So that is the reason why it took us, unfortunately, as long as it did to get it over to the Senate. But I think it was still a good product, and that is also, I think, another reason why we put the timelines and set them up the way we did, because it was the way our committee was working. It was our thought process in order to have as much buy-in as possible, not only from the various branches of government, but also legislators over this next several year period, including this committee here. So you guys, I see you as my fellow nerds. I love IT. I know that you guys aren't here because I know you guys are here because you also have a passion and like IT as well. And you guys have headspace for this. You know what you're doing here. And, I've served on this committee for at least 2 years, and I thoroughly enjoyed my time here. But you guys see the reports that many legislators don't. You guys have more information in here than most of the legislature when it comes to our cybersecurity and our IT. That's why I think this committee is going to serve a very pivotal role over the next 5-year period as you look at these implementation timelines as to asking OITS Director Maxson the questions and how they're implementing and how their progress is, or the judicial branch CEDO or the legislative branch CEDO. And so that is what I foresee with this committee, and having you guys really help with the implementation and the driving of this issue over the next several years. When it comes to the plans that the branches are going to submit, I fully expect you guys to bring them in and review those plans as well. And I would hope and ask that you would give your feedback, comments, suggestions, any tweaks or changes that need to come to Senate Bill 291. I would highly encourage you to please, well, work with the House Modernization Committee to where we can actually, make it to where you guys are also at the table as well. Because like I said, you guys are the experts. You have more information than a lot of the other legislators. And as far as the Senate goes, I think one thing that we noticed this past session was that it was placed within the Federal and State Affairs Committee, but there wasn't really a modernization counterpart that we had on the Senate side. And so I guess one thing that I would suggest or maybe have the Senate look at is, okay, is it going to be permanently in the Federal and State Affairs Committee, or is it going to be in some other committee that can really house the modernization issue? Because my understanding is the House Modernization Committee is going to continue, and we are going to continue to work on updates not only to legislative processes, but also technology. And so we have to have that counterpart, I think, that has that same base knowledge over on the Senate side that we can work with and make sure that those two teams are connecting. So that we can all really get on the same page and work as a unified team moving forward. Just real quick, again, Chair Wassinger, she's really the one that is the architect of this legislation. Don't let her lie to you and say that it was all me, because I will tell you that when it came down to the end of session, she was the one that was hunting people down. She was the one that was having the conversations with the people and bringing everybody to the table, making sure the negotiations took place, happened, and compromise was obtained. And so you guys have her on your committee. I would highly encourage you guys to use her knowledge of the bill, because she helped write the entire thing with me in my office, with the revisers, research. You guys have the expert right here on who helped draft it. Additionally, I think one of the biggest reasons for me as to why this is an issue, not only was it because the judiciary was hacked. We all know that. For me, it comes from a standpoint of, what does future conflict in the United States look like? Gone are the days of World War II when we are in a faraway place in Europe and in the Southeast Pacific. If you look at the conflict, even in the last 100 years, civilian populations have been targeted, whether it's the Allies firebombing in Germany to try to break the Germans' will during World War II, or vice versa with the Nazis bombing London. Civilian populations are, unfortunately, a casualty of war. And we've seen this over the last 100 years. And I think that with modern warfare the way it is today, we have to take steps in order to make sure that our citizens are protected, not only their data, but if a wider conflict with a peer adversary or near peer adversary takes place, then our cybersecurity and our IT is what's going to be targeted, because they're going to attempt to slow our efforts down here in the homeland to delay our response somewhere else in the world. Look at current conflicts as they are going on around the globe today. We can see what happened when Russia attacked Ukraine, and so what I guess I'm saying is that if we don't start taking the necessary steps now and work towards this 5-year type plan of making sure that we boost and increase our security as much as possible, our citizens could end up feeling it if we do end up in a conflict. And that is something that we have to do as legislators and representatives, is prioritize this as a budget priority moving forward into the future, to make sure that we are securing our systems so that water treatment facilities don't start getting taken down, so that hospitals, we just recently saw a hospital get attacked and hacked in the Wichita area, so that people have access to healthcare still and services that they need there. You got smart homes now. So what happens if a 80 or 90-year-old individual, we're in the middle of summer, their smart home somehow gets hacked? That's not necessarily maybe the government, but if that happens, they could pass away because of the heat. So this is stuff that we have to start considering as we move forward. And so that's one of the biggest reasons why I'm also pushing this and trying to make sure that we fund this moving forward, is because there are threats that exist. And I think that it is the responsibility of the government of the state of Kansas in order to protect its citizens. And Mr. Chair, I appreciate your time this morning. I appreciate the committee's time this morning, and I'm more than happy to stand for any questions.
Any questions? Wassinger, then Pam Curtis, and then
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So what do you foresee for this committee? Do you see legislative modernization working just with JCIT, or we can continue working with Fed and state?
Thank you for the question, Madam Chair. So I think that at the end of the day, you know, I do foresee maybe marriage is a poor term, but I do foresee a marriage between the Legislative Modernization Committee and this committee. But also, you know, whatever the Senate committee, they in the waning days of session had to choose a committee to try to work with us on this big issue. The upside is we have about another year and a half in order to really, before the rubber meets the road here on this, by January 15th of 2026, when these plans are due to us. So, I mean, it's up to the Senate on who they would like to choose, and really the Senate president on who he'd like to choose moving forward as a committee. I mean, do they create a new modernization committee? That's up to them to decide.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, Representative, couple of things. I agree, like there needs to be some consistency on a standing committee. We're at a point where technology just influences everything, and we really need to have, you know, to develop that expertise within the legislative body, but then we also need some consistency, like where those issues land, you know, so that it's being developed in a more thoughtful way. And then I see a balance. So I see like our first priority has to be like safety and security. We have to make sure like we are setting a good example. We're doing everything we can to make sure like our systems, our government systems, and then anybody connected to us are all following all the appropriate protocols and just being, you know, making sure that we are prioritizing safety and security. But then I also see this balance and then other issues that we need to start kind of wading into, just thinking of the future. And that is, how do you then balance all of that safety and security and all those things that we have to do and get that house in order, but then also looking at how technology affects our citizens and policies that perhaps may wade into like the consumer protection area or whatever, but who deals with those, with so many consumers that are impacted and affected by, you know, breaches and what have you. And then the other third balance that I see is how do we then use this technology to really streamline, to make things more accessible, making sure that we're not leaving people behind, because we still have this huge gap of people who are not connected. And so therefore, we still have to operate with two systems, because we have people who, you know, now we're pushing all this government payment to online, but we still have people who don't have access. So those are kind of like globally, like looking at it and just figuring out how do we as a legislative body kind of manage that enormous workload that we have in technology and cybersecurity.
Thank you, Representative. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I think that there's a lot to unpack there, and I will do my best. So first, I will say that as time marches on, right, as we continue to move forward as a state, more and more citizens are expecting instantaneous service. And I think that is just where society as a whole is going, whether it's businesses or how people interact with their state government. I know that the executive branch, my understanding is that they're looking at a portal that is a self-service portal that has all agencies in one-stop spot, so that you can log in and have access to every every part of the government that you can interact with. That's my understanding of what they're working to. Hopefully I didn't put something in Jeff's mouth just now. But anyway, so I think that as a whole, we have to provide those services because that is what other states are doing. At the end of the day, we are competing with other states in order to keep people here and making that process as streamlined as possible and those services as immediate as possible from people's phones, I think, is a benefit to the public. However, we have to make sure that we also have all of our end secure so that they can access it, put the information in there that they need to, and we don't start spilling a bunch of information out there online. Unfortunately, there are a lot of entities now that have your credit card information, your birthday, your social security number, so on and so forth. And the biggest problem, I think, today is that these companies, whether they're in other states or here, don't purge that data. And you're seeing, I think, in oftentimes where somebody will hack that company and now they just build millions of records. And now the hackers have that information. And I pretty much tell everybody today, you need some service like LifeLock to make sure that people aren't taking out additional credit cards or other things in your name because your information is just everywhere. But I think what we need to do is also make it to where the information that we have for Kansas citizens, we protect to the best of our ability, and we aren't a part of the problem, and we're part of the solution where we don't have spillage of our constituents' data out there, because that is something that they entrust us to protect if they're giving it over to us, or if it's a record that we create, because we created it when they're born, and we're tracking them and all the way up until we have their death certificate. And so that's something that we have to maintain moving forward. Early on, you and I were, before the committee started here, we were talking about cities, municipalities, school districts a little bit. This issue came up actually within the Modernization Committee on the House side as to, well, wait a minute, why is this Senate Bill 291 only addressing the state government? Well, because not only was there a limited amount of time in order to get what we needed to get done completed, but the biggest problem is that we also have to make sure that we are taking care of ourselves before we help others, right? If we're drowning and we're trying to save somebody else, well, then we both drown, right? So that was the philosophy. We're going to try to go back and help those groups, those entities of other government that maybe don't have the ability to protect themselves as well. If it's a city of 300 people and they're trying to be extorted for $500,000, well, that $500,000 is probably a good chunk of their budget because of how small of a community they are. So it is something we will have to look at in the future. But with this legislation, we didn't feel like we had the ability or time to bring in those other stakeholders, counties, municipalities, and school districts, and have a bill that had consensus and the ability to pass. And so I think it is something that we still need to work on. As to when that would be, that's a great question. More than happy to work with anybody on that, but it is something that did come up, but we just were not able to get to at this point in time.
Senator Pittman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Speaker Pro Tem Carpenter. It's a pleasure having you here. Couldn't agree with you more. Obviously, we are under threat every day from bad actors, both in domestic, foreign nation states. And I've worked myself to protect us against entities like China, entities like Russia, as well as all those other organizations that are out there. So it's imperative, and I really applaud your efforts and obviously Chair Wassinger's efforts in this. So I appreciate that. We do need something in the Senate. I approached the Senate President. I think I talked to Senator Peterson about this early on. And at 4 years ago, when we first started that up, he was new to the presidency. He wasn't sure he wanted to get into that. Didn't know the plan. So I think that this will prompt us, for sure, the Senate President, whoever that would be next session, to really look at that and say, hey, we need something to look at this because it is so pervasive. We spend a lot of money on it, and it does take a special kind of focus that I don't think the Fed and State nor the Ways and Means Committee. So I do hope and recommend from this committee that we make a recommendation to the Senate that they do something like that. On the history of how this came about, I remember working on this back 2016, 17, I think with you, with Representative Curtis. We put the initial Cybersecurity Act in place when back in the day, and we ran into some challenges, if you recall, back then.
Slept since then. If you'd be willing to remind me, that'd be great.
Yeah, so it's big challenges in terms of the organizational pieces, the centralization things that we were talking about, and so that's at least when we were able to put in place the CISO, the Chief Information Security Officer, get that established, talk about security, and actually start raising security up as a state. And so I think that this really, I was really pleased to see this product come out, and I think there's some really great things that came into it. Unfortunately, you know, we in the Senate didn't have time to look at, and it was very extensive, 35 different passages, I think there were, or sections, and it was pretty extensive, and it was good stuff. So it wasn't that we were reluctant to necessarily pass it. It was just we didn't want to do anything that had unintended consequences so quickly when it was such a big overhaul. I do wish, I'll be honest, that committee, Chairman Wessinger, had worked with JCIT a little bit during the session and just kept us up to date just a little bit about what was happening so that we could have communicated in the Senate that this was happening and it was going to happen that session, that year. And we could have been a pretty good conduit. I'm not here to throw stones, though. I think JCIT probably was underutilized in that process.
Thank you, I agree.
Yeah, so that's one thing about the process. Some of the things I think that when we think about the upcoming challenges in this bill, what I'm hoping is that we can take the next year in both committees and bring in folks so that we can really get a deeper dive into what the plan would be to centralize some of the security, what it would mean in terms of impact on their different organizations and different agencies, give them a voice. I know that you hadn't heard a lot of objections, but I think that we need to give agencies a little bit of time. State government doesn't always work so fast as some of us work up here. So I think that's going to be really imperative, is that we give some hearings and some audit time to those folks. I am worried about the portion in there that talks about audits. I think the idea was an interesting one that the committee came up with about how we could utilize some of the audit entities out there, but I think the state should really think about really investing in some sort of either a private partnership or a state agency or a SWAT team of some sort that actually is responsible for audits inside of the CISO office. We know we don't want to have it necessarily be controlled by a CISO, so we aren't biasing any kind of readouts. But I think that we should really think about something that's a very consistent set of processes. I'm also wondering, did you guys go through the NIST standards in detail with anybody and get really updated on the 2.0 to 3.0 to 4.0 to really understand what those really mean?
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So actually, yeah, I started going through the NIST standards myself and reading those. And I was also working with our IT department as well and having those conversations. And yes, it is quite extensive as far as the NIST standards. Jeff made sure to communicate that to me quite often. Not you, Jeff, the other Jeff. And so, yes, it is something that we did look at. Yes, it is going to be a difficult goal for us to hit. However, I think that it is if we are able to obtain and hit that goal, then it is going to be very much worthwhile for us. And I just want to take an opportunity or a moment here to say that it was never our intention on the House side to try to spring that on you at the last minute. We were trying to get it to you as quickly as we could, but there were a lot of revisions that had to happen with that legislation to bring all parties together to support it. But again, 2026 is really when this. I mean, I'm hoping that you guys will recommend at some point to remove the sunset on July 1 of 2026. So that the rest of this legislation can proceed forward. But that gives us the next really session. I mean, we have all next session to talk to other people and bring other agencies in and talk to them. What I will state here today is that there are some agencies, there are some groups within the government, within the executive branch specifically, that were asking for exemptions. And I don't think that we should be in the business of giving exemptions. I think we should make everybody hit the same standards in order to move forward. I understand that they think that they're doing well, and I understand that they say that they don't have a problem, but I think that as far as moving forward, if we are truly doing consolidation or OITS and having them be the not only the purchasing of single point purchasing of software and other components for these agencies, they also have the ability to provide a roadmap and a vision for the entire executive branch as a whole in order to make sure that they are all secure and moving forward lockstep together. And so I think that I would just be cautious when it comes to giving exemptions. And I know that that could very well come up from at least a few that I've heard from. And I'm hopeful, I think, that the executive branch overall, OITS and others, have committed to them that, hey, we're not going to be taking away all of your employees. That's not what this is. I'll let them speak for themselves, but that is basically the messaging that I've been hearing.
One last thing, Mr. Chair, if I may, is just on the cost of this. We have to, I mean, this has a price tag. And when we start talking about tax policy and budgets, some of us we're going to have to understand that this will have a cost. And we're going to have to step up as a body if we really feel that this is as imperative as what this legislation proposes. It could be, could be doubling of what we spend now. But I do believe that with that cost, we're going to have to overhaul much of our technology. And that can create efficiencies over a five-year period. And I think that can potentially shrink state government, but I think there will be some investment required to get to that point. And I just hope that we have commitment to back up what we ask of our agencies with, back it up with when they come back to us and say, this is what it's going to cost. We can pepper it with questions and say, is that really what you need or not? But in the end, we have to recognize that this could potentially be expensive to the state. But I think this, security of our state is worth investing in. So I just hope I get that commitment as well from everybody who's supporting this legislation.
Thank you, Senator. You are unfortunately not wrong. And it will take a commitment and us in here helping to make sure that our colleagues on the appropriations committees understand that, yeah, this could cost to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars over the next several year period. I think that we also need to look at maybe legislation or maybe policy as a refresh cycle, so that we're not sitting on 40, 50-year-old equipment anymore in these agencies. And the refresh cycle, I'd be more than happy to discuss, but like if it's a 10-year refresh cycle and every 2 years you swap out, 20% of your state services, well, after that 10-year period, the oldest thing you got is only 10 years old, or maybe it's a quicker refresh cycle than that. But if you're bringing things in and offloading them in a much timelier fashion, that those items still have resale value. And we can then basically get some money back on those items as we offload them and sell them potentially. But I think that it also lead to more cost effectiveness in the future, because this is what businesses are doing, right? So they're trying to make sure that they're the most efficient as possible. But if we can at least get onto some sort of a refresh cycle, and I'm not saying that that's not included in 291, but I think it's something that we should consider if we are spending this kind of money, that the equipment that we are purchasing today or in the very near future, we need to make sure that it's maintained, and we need to make sure that we don't let it go for 40 or 50 years and opening ourselves up to more risk.
Senator Clues.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I do appreciate Senator Pittman's words. My voice is a little gone today, but we appreciate all your hard work, Representative Wassinger. When it came to our committee there at the end, it wasn't heartburn from us that we didn't feel something needed to be done. I think that's something that we knew needed to be done, a fix, but having the capacity in that hour was huge. So I do appreciate all your work, appreciate, like I said, Senator Pittman's comments. He's been in on this, and just overall the need to resolve this. But it was just overwhelming, to be honest with you. And so to be fair to Chairman Thompson and myself, again, it's not the heartburn that we wanted to push it off. It was just the capacity of it. We knew there and know there needs to be a fix. And I look forward to helping if it comes back to Fed and State or whatever. I mean, it's obvious this is something big, but just a few words on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Haskins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Speaker, for your testimony here. I was just curious. I think one of the bigger issue, or the biggest issue I had was with the bill, and you answered that by stating, you know, we have to clean our own house up first before we go down and start looking at local cybersecurity plans, because I believe it's like only 10% of the counties have a cybersecurity plan. And so this is more of a comment. It seems like if they were going to connect with what we already have as cleaned up, that we should be able to mandate that you have a cybersecurity plan of some sort, or you can't connect. And I know that's just a recommendation, something to think about. But the issue I had in having served on this committee, and knowing that this committee is more of a working committee, you know, wanting to be more involved in this process and having concerns. If the Senate goes back and says, okay, we do need a modernization committee, the bill would need to be amended so the reports actually go from the Senate Committee on Ways and Means to the Senate Committee on Modernization. And so if it needs to be amended, cleaned up, what's the reality that it could also have in there an amendment saying that the reports have to come to the Joint Committee on IT? What would prevent that? Because it seems like we're missing an opportunity for us to work together, the Senate, so we can hear these issues that are why we can't work it out. And I know this committee wants to do that. So what's the reality of that?
Thank you, Representative. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So overall, I believe it was standing committees that were listed within the legislation. I'll let, hopefully, if the chair would permit, the revisor to answer why that might be the case instead of maybe a joint committee. I don't know maybe the reason why the revisors would tailor it that way, or if we can send a report to the joint committee. I would imagine we probably could, but I'd have to ask the revisor on the practicality and if that's allowed. But I'm not going to put her on the spot right now.
Natalie?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's an easy one, so I'll take that. So who those reports go to is simply just a policy choice. So when we were working with the people putting the legislation together, that was who first came to mind. There's no reason that this committee couldn't be added to that list.
Well, there we go. So we'll add you guys to the list. So yeah, no, I think that some adjustments that need to be made to the legislation already are, we got to consider the sunset date in 2026. More than happy to have the report sent to JCIT. But speaking of reports, one of the big thing that got the Modernization Committee fired up in the House was we actually had Legislative Post Audit come in and show us the IT audits and these red books that they had. And I'm not going to go through the confidential information that was in them, but I would highly encourage everybody on this committee to go to Legislative Post Audit and look through those books, because what you will find is shocking.
Yeah. And Mr. Chair, just to wrap up on this, I just want to make sure I'm clear, is I've never experienced on this committee any failure to deliver a report if requested. But for legacy policy purposes, it does make sense that if this is going to have teeth as the other two committees, it should be within the bill. So thank you.
Not opposed.
Senator Tyson and Senator Wassinger for the final questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative-
I just want to thank them for their work, and I do a couple of comments. You made a statement about not having exclusions and stuff, and one thing in IT, it's very difficult, but one size does not fit all. And I have great concerns over this centralized system that we're moving to. I've stressed that over the years. But I do appreciate the effort because somebody did need to step up, and it does take a lot of time and effort on this. I just caution, one size doesn't always fit all. So thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Final question, Representative Wassinger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's not really a question, but one thing I wanted to tell my colleagues, we already know this. And I hate to beat on judiciary, but as we've seen, once they got hacked, it affected many different agencies that they were attached to. So when you're trying to figure out how much money we should be putting towards this bill, you need to remember that it will affect not just the Supreme Court of the state of Kansas, but all the court systems throughout the state of Kansas. And then anything that happens with us goes with every county, and every city is watching. So it's very important that we do this and fund it properly. And we may have to start lower and go higher, but this is a very important thing. We won't be able to operate if we're hacked. So we need to make sure that it's a priority for everyone. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative, for rearranging your schedule on our very agenda. Appreciate you being here. We are running just a touch behind. Next up, we have Jeff Maxson. Welcome back to the committee.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Again, my name is Jeff Maxson. I'm the Chief Information Technology Officer for the State of Kansas Executive Branch. So we're getting set up. I'll kind of we're going to touch a little bit more on the quarterly reports. I apologize. I was not available for the last hearing, so we'll cover some of OITS's project, and we'll bring another project up that wasn't available. And I also apologize. I'm calling a little bit of audible on the order, so because I'm assuming there will probably be more questions for my project than the other one. So, all right. Again, there's a lot going on, so we got a lot to cover, and I'll try and get us through it so we can get to the Gold Star recognition. All right, so we'll cover a little bit of the quarterly report project presentations, and then we'll go into some of our efforts that are currently going on because of House Substitute for Senate Bill 291. So we are already working on the requirements that have been put on IT for that. So I'll give a brief update. I'll give some cybersecurity updates as well, and then some OITS updates. And then I'll have the closed session later this afternoon to give a kind of a threat landscape briefing. All right. So again, this is the quarterly presentations that are kind of the leftovers from last time. Again, I hope you appreciated our new model of how we're presenting projects to you. And so we welcome the feedback as we continue to go through this process to refine it and make sure we're getting you the information that you guys want. So first, we're going to start up with the KU syllabus management tool.
Morning. I'm John Rennert with the University of Kansas. I'm in our Information Technology Unit, and I'm the Director of Academic Technology. The demand we submitted for KETO was for a syllabus tool that integrates with our learning management system. So next year, 2025, is our HLC accreditation review at KU. And in 2021, we did our 4-year preview review, which helps us set requirements. The university set our recommendations of what to do before 2025. One of the recommendations was to have a central repository for syllabi of all courses. I'm not going to explain syllabus to you, but obviously having a course description and expectations in every course, as well as the required elements that the university asks each syllabus to have. So that was the primary objective of this project. We had a lot of options of the ways to go, how to collect these and have a repository. We could do something with our own storage. We could use a current tool to do that. or we could go out and find a product that matches. We ended up selecting to find a new product for some secondary benefits of being able to integrate directly with our LMS for both our faculty members, adding syllabi, and for our students, always knowing where to find them and it being standardized that way. In doing so, we ran an RFP through procurement, submitted this demand. We can talk about those risks that were involved there that were rated that meant that it didn't reach the status to submit for keto as we submitted the demand. But we ran that RFP and selected this tool called Simple Syllabus, which is a vendor cloud tool that allows our faculty to upload or create in a template, a KU special template, a course syllabus. Budget on that, the cost on that was $33,000 a year. The first year of that was paid for our provost office. We were already in a fiscal year, but now that's part of our enterprise costs in IT. We had a implementation cost that first year as well. I think that might cover the, the scope of that project was to get that purchased and then implemented before fall of 24, which we did. This was the first semester this fall that we've used it, and for the most part, it's been well adopted, well received.
Any questions? Representative Haskins.
Thank you for your testimony, and thank you, Mr. Chair. It's just really a comment is that simple syllabi is something that the Baker University is looking at. The pressure for accreditation is real, and the one main thing I have to do in my job is to review all the syllabi from all the faculty to make sure that it meets the standards. And so though I'm kind of surprised with the cost, but I do understand that KU is a little bit larger than Baker University. And so I think it's a good direction that you're going in.
Any further questions? Seeing none, thank you. Appreciate you being here.
All righty, we'll move on to the next. All right, so new demand is my project. So this is the OITS, State of Kansas Managed Data Center, or Data Center as a Service. So you all know we're currently with the provider Unisys as in a managed data center environment, managing the environments for most cabinet agencies. And so this contract is coming up to its end. So we are on the final year of, or about 13 months left on our final year of the contract. And so this procurement has been going for a while. It isn't an active RFP, so there isn't a whole lot I will discuss about the specifics of that. But again, this is to replace and kind of move into the next generation, also expand the availability of this data center as well to other non-cabinet agencies, things like that, to help start providing, again, a consistent model of support across the executive branch. So the business risk score on this came in as 2.3, and our estimated implementation cost is just under $10 million. I can tell you what we believe our estimated implementation cost is actually high based on RFP response, so implementation will be less. But obviously with time and technology, we have seen increased costs in software and hardware from even when we actually initially went out for this RFP. So there will be some other costs in there. But again, transition costs are going to be significantly less than what we anticipated, though. So, all right. So again, we estimate this project will take more or less. We have 13 months to get converted over to this new vendor. I'm hoping we can make an award notification here, ideally before the end of the month. We'll see if we can get there or not. But again, for as big as this contract is and what it manages and maintains, we want to make sure we're doing all the proper legwork and vetting the vendor. So we've had a fairly good relationship and a lot of lessons learned from our experience with Unisys the past 7 years. And so again, we're hoping this next generation will lead us into kind of the next generation of also opening up cloud abilities for agencies as well. And we did ask that of our vendors to basically be we don't necessarily always have the resources on hand, but they can bring them to help us and assist agencies to also start leveraging cloud, things like that as we move forward. So, but again, kind of the same thing, managed data center. The location will still be in Kansas. We don't want a data, so we learned our lesson when we first tried this, when the first data center was actually in Minnesota, that it caused some latency issues. So the data center has to be in Kansas for the primary, and there will be a secondary somewhere within most of them in the Midwest somewhere. So again, we'll have 2 data centers with that. We'll have connectivity between the state. The state is still the primary connectivity to that data center, so there's no outside access, things like that. So again, we're excited to see this next iteration, where we're going, but I'll stand for questions with this project.
Any questions? Representative Hoffman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jeff, you may have said, and I may have missed it. So you're expecting to have everything migrated by the end of next year?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So should be a lot quicker than the last migration.
Yes, sir. A lot of the last migration were due to some of those connectivity issues and working through networking and trying to research and a lot of testing. So we learned our lessons on what our needs are. Technology is also rapidly advanced as well. So moving things and moving systems around has actually become a lot quicker of a process as well. So
good. And then the ongoing cost of 11 million, is that on par with what we're paying now?
That is a little bit more than what we're paying now. But generally, we will probably see a little bit higher costs than what we estimate, just because the cost of software and hardware has gone up significantly. We've seen things like the acquisitions of smaller core softwares by larger companies. So like VMware being acquired by Broadcom, changing licensing terms and licensing models. So there's just a lot of fluctuation in the market. Unfortunately, IT is becoming much more expensive.
But it's a fixed cost.
It'll be per unit fixed cost, yes, sir. So the more we consume, the more we'll pay.
Oh,
so it's usually set up so it'll be a fixed cost per number of servers, things like that.
So the 11 million is an estimate of what that?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any further questions? Seeing none. Thank you.
All right. So give an update following on Representative Carpenter's presentation. We'll kind of highlight some efforts of some of the things we're doing for House Substitute for Senate Bill 291. Again, we've very short turnaround in terms of where we are from when it passed. And so we're making a lot of good progress, and just kind of give some brief updates on that and kind of our view on some things. So one of the big things that Senate Bill 291 did, it also kind of restructured ITEC, which is the state governance body, and really made it a little more executive branch centric and focused. And so with that, removed CETOs from legislative and judicial as voting members, and made the executive branch CETO the permanent chair of ITEC. And then also removed the legislative representatives to be non-voting members as well, but then added in 2 members from the regents institutions to be voting members of ITEC. So it also moved it from quarterly meetings to monthly meetings. So we have already held 2 meetings. So we held one in August and September, and have started down the path with that. So again, ITEC will be kind of one of the bodies that any plan we develop will be worked through and approved through. And I also, my commitment to you as well is, as we work through that process, we will definitely share where we are going with JCIT and the progress updates. And so I'll talk a little bit more about that here in a second as well. But ITEC, like I said, we've already moved very fast and very focused, and we've actually already started working on policies, things like that, to get going. And I can mention in the 2 months that ITEC has been working in this fashion, we've already got more policies on the table for review than we have the past 2 to 4 years. So we're very focused and purposeful on what we're doing with the time in ITEC to get going. All right. So also within Senate Bill 291 is the requirement for state agencies to follow the NIST Cybersecurity Framework version 2.0 at its current time. When the bill passed, obviously there might be modifications. So the cybersecurity framework is I don't want to say a boiled down version of the NIST, which is National Institute of Standard and Technology's risk management framework, special publication 800-53, which is the very, very large compliance that federal agencies have to follow. The federal government recognized that was pretty cumbersome just to even get through and review and work through. That document is close to 250 pages, I think. Actually, it might be more, of just requirements and controls. So they recognized that that was, I don't want to say a bridge too far, but that was exceedingly difficult for agencies to comprehend, and then also for other partners to leverage. So they came up with the cybersecurity framework, which was very much pointed to focus and be achievable. And so that is where the cybersecurity framework came from. And they're on the second iteration. It has been kind of recognized as kind of a leader of a cybersecurity framework. So we're very appreciative that we're going down the cybersecurity framework and kind of setting that standard. And so it does outline some maturity levels and some gates that we need to hit in maturity levels. So that also gives us kind of the goalposts we need to hit, which is also good as well. So we're already working through that. So we're looking to put out a task order for a vendor to come in and do a baseline assessment of executive branch, so we know where we are and what steps we need to do to keep moving down the maturity model. We're also looking at bringing in and doing some training for all the agencies or executives and CIOs about what it means for the cybersecurity framework as well. So we are taking this and we are starting to take actions towards it and move through it. One of the other big pieces that came out of it, which is something that has been very much needed, is requiring the Chief Information Security Officer to review contracts from a centralized position of anything that is IT related. So this is a large task, but we are currently engaged with the procurement office to start inserting ourselves into the process. So right now there are multiple ways agencies can procure either software, hardware, or IT projects, things like that. So we're trying to make sure we're putting our gates in at various points for review. So we're working to see about the CARS process, about getting reviews in there and what agencies submit. So agencies can go through traditional RFPs. They can do a task order for vendors that are already on contract, or they can go through a software VAR that is already a value-added reseller, or hardware value-added reseller that is already on contract to procure software equipment. So we're trying to make sure we're inserting us at all those different gates to make sure we can start reviewing and have appropriate language in there. We've already kicked some things back to agencies that didn't meet standards or have appropriate specifications. So again, there's a lot to unpack here. We're working through it, but we're already in the process and we're already reviewing contracts and starting to kick things back as we see that need work. So again, this is big. This is a good one. This will have immediate impacts as we go through it. So we're happy for this. All right. So some of the other activities are around Senate Bill 291. So one of the things we're doing is we're working specifications to bring in a third-party consultant to help us build this plan. This is something that we can't do ourselves. This will require a lot of research and information gathering. We are seeing a lot of states do consolidation. So notably right now, the state of Idaho and the state of Iowa are doing IT consolidations, two very different aspects. They have had vendors help them through the processes. So there's people out there with the expertise and seeing what is working, what isn't. So we want to bring that to assist us. So this is not something we'll be doing ourselves or we'll be doing in a vacuum either. One of the other things I am actively doing right now is I am working to pull what all IT spend has been in the state for the previous fiscal year. So I'm starting to go through that, starting to find where there are places where we're multiple agencies spending money with the same vendors, things like that. So where are there opportunities to maybe come up with an enterprise agreement or something and build economies of scale. So again, that is a very tedious process, but also we need agencies to make sure when they're submitting things through the SMART system, which is our accounting system, they're actually coding them appropriately. So when we do these queries, they come back right. So we have started to uncover some things that have been some large spends that were coded, maybe just blanketly professional services. So then we kind of have to figure out, okay, is this vendor somebody that does IT work? What is behind that? And so we're trying to make those inroads and start looking and assessing that. On the other pieces is this looked at fully consolidating cybersecurity within the agencies. So we're looking at what active cybersecurity resources are in the agencies and what that looks like and what the cost is for salaries, things like that. The immediate plan is not necessarily just yank people out of agencies and say, here you go. It's going to be, we start paying their salaries, get them off your books, but they're going to probably stay in place to continue managing what is there until appropriate resources can be put in place. So, but we're still going to work on a game plan. But part of that is just seeing what is out there and getting that information. All right. Any questions on our efforts for House Substitute for 291?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Going back to going back to a couple places, but where do you see so my understanding of the bill is the CETOs of the three branches are supposed to kind of be working together. Granted, the executive branch is the biggest, one has the most agencies. So where do you see that, or I guess what are you doing in order to make sure that is happening?
Yeah, so they're still, thank you for that question. Appreciate that, Representative Hoffman. So they're still non-voting members of ITEC, so they still show up. They've both the CETOs from judicial and legislative who showed up to the ITEC meetings, and so we have avenues to communicate with that. Again, we still do provide services to each of those branches, so we are working through those aspects as well. So we're here to help provide services to anybody that kind of asks, or guidance, or we're willing to work. So even to the points about local governments, if they come asking questions, we try and help best we can. Now, we might not be able to directly provide resources in certain areas, but we can help kind of work through things.
Yeah, I guess the question may be more of cybersecurity as far as, well, one of the things we saw during the judiciary was kind of that lack of, I think judiciary didn't know for sure what they could ask from you, and you kind of had to be a little bit of careful, when you went into to help them. So how has that gotten any better? I guess that's the question maybe I would need to ask a little bit more.
Yes, sir. So we have worked with the judiciary specifically. They have invited us to participate in some of their new cybersecurity steering committee meetings about how they're approaching and working cybersecurity through judiciary side. They have invited us to those to help provide input and feedback. One of the things we've also are trying to work with them is there are more services we can provide them. They can give us some more visibility so we can help detect things as they occur, but that is their decision. We have that available to them, but they need to make those decisions. We've offered those up. So, so since they reside on our network, we do have some monitoring over, but we can only see to a certain point if they want us to watch more. So for example, talk about it here in a little bit. Last year, you authorized us to staff a 24/7 security operations center. So those people will be here in Topeka on site monitoring the network for events and anomalies. And if they feed us those logs, my staff can watch and monitor and alert and provide and call when they see things that are abnormal. So it's just continuing to build up our services and offer those to the other branches as well. Okay. So
I may have got a little bit ahead of then. I'm sorry. So you'll talk a little bit more about
yes, sir.
That. And then the last thing on the where was that? On the plans, where you're looking in on the plans.
Yes, sir.
Does that include the fee-based agencies, the small fee-based?
Yes, sir. Yeah, well, all executive branch, we're not delineating between whether it's a board or not, just if they fall within the definition of executive branch.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. How much backlash did you get from some of these agencies? That's one of the things we anticipated, and I don't want you to call them out, but percentage-wise.
Yeah. A lot of it was, thank you for the question, ma'am. A lot of it was more questions than anything. So rightfully so. State IT has not necessarily had the best track record in the past of various reasons and things, but that is the past. And so again, making ourselves available to answer questions and explain what is actually happening and what that means for them. Again, to the point, it's not just we're going to come in here and start yanking people out and redoing everything. To Senator Tyson's point, one size does not fit all. We recognize that. So there has to be a very methodical and planned process, and there are certain things that make sense and certain things that don't from that perspective. So kind of working through what those are, but then showing, hey, here's opportunities over here that might help, and kind of, sending and giving people that roadmap to understand where things are going has been key. So
Good job. I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
all right, cybersecurity updates. Again, this will be a little bit high level. We'll go into more in the closed session here later this morning, but a lot of big things going on in this space. And so there's a lot of things I actually do want to highlight. So as you recall, as part of the infrastructure, the IIJA or Infrastructure Investment Act, there was a state and local cybersecurity grant program that was put together by the federal government that much mirrored the Homeland Security Grant Project or grant program. Excuse me. And so we just recently issued the first fiscal year's award dollars. And so just kind of want to give a little background on that. We had 74 applications asking for approximately, pulling up my notes, $4.73 million. We only had $2.23 million to issue. So for this first fiscal year. So again, we ended up approving 60 projects out of that first fiscal year. And I recognize this as fiscal year 2022. So part of the requirements was the state had to build a statewide cybersecurity plan, which is what we actually did that first year. And then but we have 4 years to allocate and spend money for each fiscal year. So for the award period. So after building that plan and getting things in place to have a grant process in place, we were just now able to award that money. So I believe applications for that were received back in, I believe, April, springtime. And so through the review, we've turned around and we've started issuing award letters, and we're working and getting everything approved from FEMA and DHS CISA. So fiscal year 23 will open up in January for local governments to send in applications. And so for that year, we do have an award of, we have $5.4 million to award, but this also comes with a 20% cost match. So again, we're going to work very carefully on how we can handle that. What we are seeing in a lot of states is we are seeing states provide actual cybersecurity services with these dollars to the local governments at either a reduced or no cost at all to them. So that is one model we're seeing. In this case, we just issued funds to the local governments because we are not positioned quite at a point where we can provide services to local governments. But that is one of the models we're seeing to try and build something sustainable and not just kind of one time. And then how do we address it later? So the notice of funding opportunity for fiscal year 24 literally came out earlier this week. So we'll be starting to map out that next fiscal year as well. And I believe that one was $4.2 million for fiscal year 24, but that actually now comes with a 30% cost match. So the way they've done that increases the cost match each subsequent fiscal year. So, but again, we're excited to see that. And so again, we had 60 applications that are being funded through that grant program this first fiscal year. All right. So as mentioned earlier by Representative Carpenter, so water, wastewater is actually something that has been on our mind and something we're working on. So in July 2020, actually, this goes back to 2021, the Environmental Protection Agency issued a memorandum identifying as cybersecurity is going to be a challenge for water, wastewater here in the future. And they subsequently went on to issue a requirement that we need to start doing cybersecurity assessments of water and wastewater treatment plants. And again, not the expert in this. This is KDHE's landscape. But when we saw that, we reached out to them saying, hey, we saw this requirement. We don't know this, but if you guys need help, we're here to help. And so out of that kind of bloomed this partnership between the KSO office, KDHE, and then also DHS CISA, one of our CISA reps here in Kansas, specialized in operational technology, which is the technology used to run water and wastewater treatment plants or SCADA systems. And so we engaged with him and we started building an actual training program to train these water operators around cybersecurity. And so Kansas has approximately, again, I don't have the exact numbers, around 900 water systems here in Kansas. And so a lot of them being rural and serving populations less than 5,000, but they still have similar requirements and are still of a concern. But what happened out of this kind of partnership is we are actually building what I'll say is the first in the country of an actual training program. We've already held, I believe, 6 training sessions with water operators in the first part of this year. And we're continuing to hold more. And so, let's see, I take that back. We've had 9 sessions completed this year, and we're getting ready to do the next iteration of that as well. And so we've actually engaged with the National Governors Association to showcase this effort because, again, I think we were one of the first in the country to put some sort of comprehensive plan together, and we've actually won several awards from As you can see, State Scoop, which is a state IT news organization, and then also GovTech, which again is another state IT news organization. So again, this was just, and we're doing this on a budget of basically $0. So this is something that built purely on partnerships we're working through in areas that haven't traditionally worked with cybersecurity to bring cybersecurity, build a working relationship, and even working with our federal partners at the same time. So a lot of good things coming of this and a lot more to come with this as we move forward. As we continue to expand upon it, we'll see a lot of good things come from this. So we're excited for this program. All right, another thing we have done, again, as mentioned, is this is not a short-term fix with cybersecurity. So one of the things we've done is we've partnered with the Adjutant General and the Homeland Security Department to use Homeland Security grant dollars to start putting on cybersecurity training. We've done this for several years, but this year we had kind of a capstone training. So we included a SANS 401 Security Essential course. So SANS is probably the premier cyber training curriculum that exists out there. It's about $10,000 a course is kind of the running cost. We actually worked with SANS and was able to put on a class for approximately 50 individuals. We had 43 that could make it. This was a 6-day course, 10 hours a day. And like I said, it's normally $10,000, but we were able to pull this down to where each seat was about $3,500. And so with this, we had 44 participants. We had 8 state participants, 12 county participants, 6 municipal participants, 14 school district participants, and 4 court participants. So again, we opened this up to everybody. So this is not just state government. This is how we build a whole of state, whole of Kansas approach to cybersecurity. You teach them to fish, they'll be able to survive type thing. So this is kind of the mentality we're taking. Again, using grant dollars, no long-term cost, but should have long-term benefit. And this was also done in the Adjutant General's Heartland Preparedness Center down in Wichita. So trying to put in locations that people can attend. All right, this training is a big theme. It's something that we can have the greatest impact with fewest resources. So again, along these lines, kind of following that similar model, we've also put on several what we call it's from an organization called EC Council Certified Ethical Hacker courses. So basically, this isn't teaching people it teaches people the principles of hacking so they can defend against it or assess their networks. And so we've held the first class in June of this year and had 15 participants in that. Again, this is a 40-hour class, and we'll be holding a second one here in January of 2025. So this is kind of our second and third year of doing some of these things, and we've had a lot of great feedback. But again, this is open to local governments, school districts, and state employees, so a lot of good feedback. Another partner organization we have is the Texas A&M Engineering Extension School, or known as TEEX. They are provided some federal dollars to provide various training courses. And so we've provided 2 courses of this AWR 383, which is cybersecurity risk awareness for officials and senior management. And so we provided this in July here in Topeka. Typically that is down at the Armory there on Topeka Boulevard. So the Eisenhower conference room is where that is held. Had 24 people on the first session and then 18 in the second session. So again, this is just kind of continuing to elevate the awareness of cybersecurity for executives within, and again, open to local government, state government as well. All right, some upcoming events we have going on. So every year we have the Governor's Cybersecurity Summit for Executives. So this is our 6th year doing this. And this year we're doing a little bit different. We're splitting out the cabinet agencies, the non-cabinet agencies. Past years we've had them all together, but knowing there are some differences, some of the feedback was that they'd like us to split it out. So we're doing this. This will be 2 different days. The past few years we have walked through tabletop exercises at the management level and not necessarily the IT level, but getting them familiar with their roles and responsibilities. It's not a, hey, CIO, go solve this problem. No, they have active decisions they have to make, and so we want to walk them through it. So we tell them, bring their public affairs people, bring their legal counsel, bring some of their business unit directors so we can walk through. So decision points, like if something were to happen, what are you telling your call center representatives on what they should say? Stuff that you don't necessarily think about during an incident right away, but are some pretty key decisions that you need to do. Or are you going to delegate authority to the CIO to say, hey, if we have an incident, you have my approval to go disconnect the network? Some people run into issues by just doing that on their own without having that approval. So getting them to think about some things that they haven't necessarily thought of. Another new thing we're doing this year, so we have done the third cyber security summit for public sector. We're actually going to introduce a new flavor of this, and it's going to start out small, but we're going to do a Kansas Critical Infrastructure Executive Exchange. So again, building our partnerships with those critical infrastructures here in Kansas to just actually foster relationships. No, we can't solve all the problems, but if we have relationships and partnerships, when something happens, it just becomes easier to tackle problems in the future. So again, this is kind of a new push we're making into, but I think we'll have a lot of great outcomes out of this and be able to learn a lot in what exists out there as well. So as I mentioned earlier, moving on to policies. So the executive CISO shall establish security standards and policies to protect the branch's information technology systems and infrastructure. This was in Senate Bill 291. This was something that was just added into the Kansas Information Security Act, or the Cybersecurity Act 2 years ago. This reinforces it. And using this and working through the new ITEC structure, we have issued 2 sets of policies for review already. And within those 2 sets, we're up to 13 separate policies that ITEC is currently reviewing. So again, we were seeing long lag times on getting policies through ITEC in the past. This has allowed us to speed it up and get a lot of feedback quickly. And so we'll continue to enhance the state's posture through continuously updated policies moving forward. So again, this was a large set of information that we dumped on all the people within ITEC, but has been received, gotten good feedback. So we'll probably start approving this first batch, I'm hoping here in October. So again, making progress in this space, helping improve the posture of Kansas as a whole, and again, setting a roadmap on where we need to go as well. All right. So last update I want to leave on the security side, and then I'll discuss the others in the closed session. So as I mentioned earlier, last fiscal year, or last legislative session, you authorized us additional 12 FTEs to establish a 24/7 security operations center. We've acquired the additional space to house these folks. We've purchased the furniture, so we're waiting on that furniture delivery so we can space it, or get the space ready for them, and we'll begin hiring of those individuals here shortly. So one of the things we have been doing over the past couple of years is laying the infrastructure in terms of monitoring capabilities and tools across the executive branch that will feed these folks so they have immediate impact day one. So right now we have people doing this job now, but it is not 24/7. This will expand it to 24/7 and give us that visibility. We know most things happen on Friday nights or weekends or overnight. So this will allow us to actively monitor that. So we're very excited for that. Also, as part of this request process was resourced to hire a chief data officer and a chief privacy officer, and those postings are out there, and we're soliciting applications for those as well. So again, helping build overall programs that help better manage our data and protect our citizens' privacy and security as well. So a lot of good things moving, a lot of work, a lot more to do. It is never ending, but we're making progress. And with that, I'll stand for security questions.
Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the 12 FTs, I'm assuming you're doing interviews.
As we're mapping out the most ideal schedule, we should be hopefully posting those and starting the interview here within the next month or so. So part of we had to make sure we have space to land them.
Right. How long do you think it'll take to hire them?
I think hiring day shift jobs are probably going to be pretty easy. For the analysts, we've been very successful in bringing people in. We've been very successful with interns and bring them in and flipping them. It's going to be those late night shifts that we're going to struggle to fill realistically. But I think there's a lot of people trying to get into cybersecurity, and this is a great job for them to get into it.
Thank you.
Representative Turner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just wondering about your general view of participation in these various training programs that you offered. I see 44 went to one, 30 to another. I don't know what the option was. What's your general view of that?
So that's a great question. So I think the participation is, we're full almost every time, and there's people asking for more of it. And the makeup is it's open up to local government, school districts, anybody that is basically a public sector employee. And so we try and host them in various places across the state so we can get that reach out to, Western Kansas and have people attend it. So I believe at one point we did one out in Hayes for some folks out there. And so, but again, we're working to build those partnerships, and this is a great resource. The training usually isn't cheap, and those local governments don't have the budget to send their people. So this is an easy way we can, again, get some long-term wins for minimal upfront investment.
So they are full. The classes are full. That's what I wasn't clear on, if that was half or full.
Yes.
But, so the constraint of offering additional capacity for training is money?
The funding to host the trainings. Right now, we've been doing almost all training through grant dollars. And that has been our avenue because it is one that has the widest impact, and it's just not buying a piece of equipment that sits on a shelf, things like that. So
thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Tyson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the presentation. So you said you're not having trouble hiring, but how are you on retaining? I know that tends to be a bigger issue for state.
it is a push and pull, ma'am. Unfortunately, we do struggle competing sometimes. So we do have some of that turnover. We'll have somebody for about 2 years, get them trained up, and they move on. Hopefully we've made their career within the state enjoyable, that they want to stay and the benefits outweigh, but we're also seeing the inverse. We're seeing people come back to the state because it wasn't necessarily greener on the other side.
I just think we need to be aware of that as we're setting salaries, and is retention. After we spend all that money on training,
Absolutely,
is
ma'am.
a considerable amount. Also, Mr. Chairman, if I may, what types of background checks do you check for people that you are hiring?
For people that we're hiring, you do have to go through a national FBI background check. So we fingerprint everybody that is through OITS is fingerprinted and goes through a federal background check.
Are you doing a criminal, financial?
Criminal.
Not financial then. So I see some weaknesses already. I'll be quiet. I don't want to point out the rest of them, but we need to take a hard look at how we're hiring our employees, especially the keepers of the data.
Don't disagree, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any further questions?
All right. So next we'll move on to OITS updates. All right. So earlier this year, we actually moved from our facility that was in the old National Guard headquarters down at 27th and Topeka Boulevard back into the Land and State Office building. And we reoccupied the space we were in and the space that the data centers were in. So all that work of moving out, we have converted the data center space into office space, and that is where we're reoccupying now. So long road coming. About 10 years we were down there and back now. But again, it's all paid off, and we're excited to be back downtown. So that is one of our big updates. That move went relatively smoothly, and we didn't cause any disruptions in services while we were doing that. And so again, we had some experience, but we're excited that we were able to get back downtown. One of our other big projects that I want to talk about and showcase and kind of highlight. So using ARPA and Spark money, we undertook a process to modernize a lot of our old legacy websites and get them on a modern mobile-friendly platform, work across multiple agencies to accomplish this, and it has actually even grown beyond. So our initial scope was 26 websites of primarily non-cabinet agencies that OITS had hosted previously on a legacy platform. We worked to modernize them through a vendor, Granicus, to get them into a uniform look and feel as well, and start putting some kind of standards around what a state of Kansas website should look like. A lot of great outcomes in this. I'll show a couple of the websites. Appreciate the partnerships of the agencies, and we've even gone as far as, so now some major cabinet agencies are also looking to host their public websites on this. And again, this is their informational websites, not necessarily their application websites, but they're informational. So a lot of great work, great management on this project. It is on time, on budget, and we're excited to see this as one of our major outcomes of the ARPA money. So with that, I'll see if I can bring up some of these. So bear with me, technical difficulties. So this is the website for this. I believe this is the dental board. So again, common look and feel, mobile friendly, easier to navigate, and again, kind of very excited. A lot of themes that we pulled out that are uniform across all of them. So again, excited to see how these have turned out. And the Real Estate Commission, again, very similar look and feel. Again, all these are all .gov, so moving away from the .orgs and .coms that we have existing in the state. So again, this also makes it easier to start now pulling in some of those single portals that we're looking to, as everything looks and feels the same as you're moving through. And then also, as I mentioned, we have some of the large cabinet agencies that are starting to leverage this platform now as well. Outside of our project, this is the feedback we've gotten, that people are wanting to get onto the solution. So again, excited. This is a great example of a success where we start pulling in things that have gone different directions to start getting a better handle on what that is. So
A lot of agencies are keeping their same domains and having to redirect to the .gov.
yes, sir. That is the easiest way to do it. And then you hang on to those old domains basically forever, so bad actors can't get on them, and what we call typo squat or squat on them or hijack the domain. So we still maintain all the vanity domains. Everything gets redirected to the .gov. So again, it guarantees that people know they're on a government website. So some of the others that are still, so Department of Labor is another cabinet agency. Department of Transportation is coming onto this platform, and they're still in development. And then again, some that have come outside of the scope, Judicial Council, as well as the governor's office, is coming onto this platform as well. So again, a lot of great feedback we've received. All right. The next big topic, artificial intelligence. So a lot moving in this space, a lot occurring. There is still a lot of conversation outside here. So kind of an update on where we are here in Kansas. We are one of 2 states that are participating in the NIST AI Safety Institute Consortium. So I believe it's us and California are the 2 states that are participating in it. And this is a place where we can work with industry, work with peers, and kind of work through the problems and challenges and opportunities AI presents. We're also a participant in the Government Technology Center for Public Sector Artificial Intelligence. So again, this is an organization that fosters public organization collaboration. So we're participating in that, and we recently came back from a conference through this organization that had a lot of representation, not just from other states, but cities and counties as well, and talking about use cases, challenges, and concerns. Also, as I mentioned in previous, this is moving very fast. So while we just put our policy in place last year around or generative artificial intelligence, we already have a draft of a new version of this based on things we're hearing and what that looks like. So we'll hopefully come out with that here in the next couple months. But some of the key things that have been added is basically we're going to create an inventory of all AI solutions that are being proposed and in production, so we can work through, assess the risks. What is it doing with the data? How's it doing? What are the outcomes of the data? And we can start building what we have in the state in the inventory. And so we know what we have. Agencies will clearly need to let citizens know when they're interacting with a generative AI solution. So if they're doing something that is using like an IVR or voice system, they'll need to let the citizens know they're interacting with a generative AI solution. Or if they're using a chat bot or something that has an AI backend, they need to let the individuals know they're interacting with that. Also, we'll need the agencies, or we'll require the agencies to note any content that is generated by generative AI. So if they're using it to produce some sort of piece of information, they need to let folks know it's generated by generative AI. So again, that is some of the things we are seeing other organizations do. And then also the other thing around it, all of this is, again, procurement guidelines and how we're making sure vendors are notifying us, how the vendors are managing it. We're seeing them all implement. That's their buzzword, is we have AI. So we're seeing them all do it. So how are we keeping track of it? How are we managing that? So we'll continue to build on that in the policy as well. And with that, I'll stand for questions.
Any questions? Seeing that, I do have one off topic one. Last month there was mention that the ks.gov wireless will be going down in the Capitol. Was that going to be
Yes, sir.
a permanent thing?
So in its form, yes, but we have alternatives. So right now, the way it is protected is not sufficient. So we have alternatives to do that, but there's no way to keep it in its current form without adding additional components that are going to be more specific to those that need it. So we have alternatives that we're working with those that are using it to try and implement that alternative. So there will be a form of a secure wireless, but just not in its current state.
Me, looks like we're almost right here on schedule for our 9:50 break. The Gold Star family, we're going to recess so members can attend the Gold Star Family Remembrance. It's on the south side of the Capitol out on the lawn. With that, we will be in recess till 11 o'clock. Please turn in your vouchers. get started. You were saying to get the IT up. First up, we have Jeff Maxon. I believe we're needing this to be a closed session. Representative Hoffman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that the open meeting of the Joint Committee on Information Technology be recessed for a closed or executive meeting pursuant to KSA 75-4319A to discuss subjects relating to cybersecurity in the executive branch with Jeff Maxim, Executive Branch Information Technology Officer, and Allie Denning, Director of Public Affairs, OITS, pursuant to KSA 75-4319B12C, because the discussion of such subject is in an open meeting would jeopardize such security measures that the committee resumes the open meeting in room 582 north of the State House at what time? How much time do we have down on it? We have 30 minutes on it. 11:25. At 11:25, that the discussion during the closed or executive meeting shall be limited to those subjects stated in this motion, and to record this motion if adopted as part of the permanent record of the committee.
You've heard the motion. Do we have a second? Seconded by Representative Curtis. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Give us just a minute. We'll get ready to go into closed session. Back into open session. Next up, we have John Langer. Welcome back to the committee, John.
Good morning. It's good to be back. As you said, John Langer, Director of Technical Service here for the State House. And I'm assuming you probably got questions about the migration, which I'll be more than glad to answer and help out if I can on what's going on and what's taking place. First of all, I just kind of want to reiterate where we are right now in our current migration process. We're pretty much 95% done. And I know that some of you have been having some issues and some problems with contacts and stuff, which we will help if you have issues. Please get a hold of us. But the migration process has gone extremely well, much better than I ever would have anticipated. Believe me, when you have over 600 mailboxes that you want to make sure get moved over and we don't lose any data, this has been a headache. And I have a wonderful staff that has been helping us with this, getting this migration. And I think because we went ahead and took the proper steps early on in bringing an outside consultant to help us take a look at where we were in our system, that we've been able to migrate fairly smoothly in this process. The whole idea is that by moving to this, we're going to see some new and enhanced features in the email system as well. If you've looked at some of the features now in the current browser or the client, you'll see that there is also a encrypted version of mail that you can send. So that is built into that process. Anybody who is in the Microsoft suite and has that capability has the ability to open that up automatically because they're in the system. Anybody outside, they have options where they can also, enter a passcode to get in and retrieve the message. So it does give us another level of security in the mail system itself. It is my hope that basically by October the 11th, we'll be completed completely with the migration, and then we can move forward in the various other aspects of the process. And with that, I'll stand for questions. You can open up whatever you want at me. So,
Virginia Popham.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And John, I'm glad that the migration went smoothly, but I'm not sure the migration for the legislators and the users is going as smoothly.
okay.
And so, I mean, I was on a bus tour this and everybody was having trouble. And so in the future, we've got to figure out a way to make sure that people know what's going to happen. Because when you guys came and talked to us last time, well, in October, well, no, we're not in October, whenever it was, and you said you were going to migrate, you never mentioned that it was going to require us to change on our phones, lose all access to our email and things like that. And so just a tremendous amount of angst out there. And I'm sure that there's still several legislators who haven't even got it done yet, because I talked to a couple today, say, hey, you got to do this and this and this. And so we've got to somehow figure out how to let people know, because I didn't know. And, all of a sudden my email wouldn't let me. I kept putting my password in, And so, anyway, I'm not sure how we do that in the future. I mean, we should have waited to do this until we came back for session.
I do understand your concerns on that. And I do wish there was probably an easier way that we could communicate. I can tell you that has been a big concern of mine, is making sure that we can get this communication out to you as well as we did. And I don't know if we did that well enough or not. I know Umberto, our 365 admin who's been in charge of this, was sending out various emails explaining the process. But here again, to lay it all out for everybody to understand, sometimes that's a little bit of a difficult task. And so I do understand that. As for contacts in the various older apps, you can still do that. It just takes a little bit more setup. And if you would like to do that, let us know. We'll get the staff down there to help you with that process. We looked at going to the Microsoft app directly on the various individual mobile devices because we feel it offers better security in regards to having it in a separate email client. It's not mixed in with your other Google accounts and everything else. And I know that can be a little bit disconcerting for some because you like to have it all at the same place. And we can set that back up if you would like to do that. I prefer that you wouldn't because of the security issues there, because it just, like I said, I feel it offers better security. And like I say, if you do need to get your contacts into the old message system, that can still be done as well. We have a couple different options.
Okay, yeah, because that's one of the issues I know I'm still having trouble with is
Yeah,
any of my contacts that are iCloud contacts,
Mhm.
they will not self-populate when you try to email somebody through Outlook.
Right, and that
So-
is a difficult, we'll have to figure out how to pull in some of those older iCloud accounts. We'll have to check into that. I do know that any of the accounts that are on your local government system that you have in your My Contacts should populate into the device.
Yeah, and they
with no
do.
problem.
They do, but majority of my contacts, when I put it defaults. And I imagine almost anybody that has an iPhone is probably the same thing. It defaults to iCloud, and so I don't know if people have realized yet, but I tried to send an email to someone who and it was another legislator, but I was wanting to send it to his personal email address, and it just would not. I couldn't find it, and so anyway, those are issues that we've got to get figured out because I'm sure that I'm not the only one that's going to have that problem.
We definitely want you to work with us. Feel free to give us a call. We've been dealing with a lot of the issues here this last week, so
Sure you
we're getting kind of used to it.
Yeah.
But, we'll definitely, work with you and hopefully come up with a resolution for this.
I would suggest that maybe in the future, when something big like this is going to happen, that you contact our leadership and have them send out an email, because when we get an email from our leadership, we usually see that. I'm sorry, but
Well,
we get so many emails, and even the ones that you guys send, a lot of times they're just notices of, something small, and it just doesn't get seen. But if it comes from leadership, usually we'll see it and we'll know.
Well, I'll definitely take that into account because that is one of the questions that I've been dealing with. How do we get you to take a look at something that's truly important? I know we send out these ugly emails a lot of times about what's going on when the network's going to be down or we're doing updates. And I think sometimes out of our own, how do we say, just getting used to things, we don't look at them because we think, they're just doing maintenance. But a lot of times it's other things that we're sending out.
Yeah. Well, I do know that I think that like with the Arctic wolf, I think leadership's going to send out something because we still have people that don't even realize what that is. So they think it's spam. So even though you guys, I know you've sent out another, so I think they're going to send. So that may be an option of something to do. I know it's probably something we needed to happen. It just as, everybody's pretty busy with elections and all that, and then now they're dealing with this. So and we're old.
One of the things
Pam said that. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
One of the things that we were really looking at in this process, and this is something that got started basically last year because we were looking at what we needed to do to move forward with this migration. Basically, Microsoft was going to pull the plug on the device we have. I think we're probably one of the last agencies really to move over to the 365. And of course, when we originally looked at this, they had talked about removing and ending life of Exchange this fall. Of course, as Microsoft always does, they usually extend it. So they extended it for another year. And the official cutoff is actually, I believe, next fall of 25. So, we were looking at this migration as to when we could best do it and cut over. We were going to have to do it, and this made the best sense to do it now during this time. I wish it wasn't during an election year, but, that's the way that it worked out. And like I say, I truly understand some of the concerns that you have, believe me, the technical staff are more than willing to work with you to get this resolved. So, and we'll do what we can.
I just got all of my contacts migrated after the gold star. Went downstairs and they fixed my computer and my telephone, and they never once looked at me like I was an old person that needed too much help. They were very kind and very understanding. So I just want everybody to know, anyone who has problems, not just here, if you hear someone else, they will also probably walk you through it up via the phone.
I'm
Thank you,
open
John.
for any questions regarding this or anything else that you would like to discuss at this moment. I'll leave it to you.
Things are going to go well when we get rid of the .gov wireless network and go to the new solution.
Well, I'm not really the person to be talking about that particular aspect, but I will give you this guarantee, regardless of whatever the outcome is of whether we have a ks.gov or another secure network, we do have something in place. And this will be implemented on our new laptop rounds and will be going out. It's based on zero trust, and we're working through some of the various applications to allow it. I would like to see us have a secure network on the wireless network here, and hopefully we can have something like that here in the future. But we are already looking at plans basically for when you're outside of the building that would have that protection and offer the VPN type of application. We do have a VPN built into your laptops already now for when you're away, but this feature actually works a little better. Basically just flip the switch on down at the bottom and it authenticates into the system. We're still working on how we're going to set up the policies for the various groups that we need to make, but that's something that we'll get working here in the very short future. It's been working very well when we've tested it, but like I said, I'd like to have a secure network in the building if we could.
Appreciate the fact that you're on it. Thank you. Senator Tice.
I would reiterate that. Thank you, John, and I agree with you 100%. We need secure. So thank you.
Okay. That's it.
Further questions? See none.
All right. Thank you.
Well, committee, is there anything we need to discuss today for putting on our report at the end? I believe there were some recommendations tossed out about possibly recommending the Senate look at staying up a committee for IT.
Mr.
Senate look at staying up an IT committee, to look at the modernization, cybersecurity.
I would recommend that at least the amendment to the bill, including our committee, is added. No question that they've delivered the reports that we have asked, but in the future it would be nice to make sure it's permanent, and so as well as it does seem to be the recommendation that they continue the discussion about modernization committee.
Good one too, that report comes to JCIT.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, if this committee wants to do legislation to make amendments to that bill, we can draft it as a bill, or you can put it as a recommendation in the report. So whichever the committee prefers.
Does the committee want to have a bill drafted? Can we get that drafted before next month to look at?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So one thing that kind of struck me was in the discussion, it was brought up about purging data. So I'm just wondering if we shouldn't explore a policy recommendation for agencies that retain data. Some of that data is not necessary. I remember when I went to visit an educational institution in Johnson County, they scanned my driver's license and I asked them, how long do you keep that? And they keep that forever. And it's a third party. So I'm just wondering if we shouldn't just have, maybe do a little bit of research and see what others are doing as far as policies concerning retaining data and purging data. And maybe we should think about introducing something next year to address that issue.
The future presentation or?
Yes, or perhaps maybe some research to see what is actually happening in that area. Because I think other states are probably dealing with it, right? I don't know. But I just think that's an issue we should look into. Either a presentation or.
Look into seeing how long they store their.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know. I think it would be prudent of us to put in the report, John, Jeff, the IT guys that the state has right now, they deserve an attaboy. I know you guys came into a system that was broken, and you are moving as fast as you can with the resources that you have, and it's very much appreciated. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
No objections to that one. Well, committee, any further business to come before us? Next meeting is October 30th.